Okay, good. Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, warm greetings to you all from around the world and welcome to this side event of the High Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development 2022. This side event is focused on climate competitiveness, how small businesses in developing countries can contribute to a climate smart recovery and Agenda 2030 through international trade. It's hosted by the International Trade Center and our partners, and we're very pleased that you could be with us here today. We hope that you've had a successful first day of the High Level Political Forum, and we look forward to the continuation of this event and our participation in this. My name is Rifka Japi. I am the representative of the International Trade Center to the United Nations based here, and I'm here in New York. For those who don't know us, ITC is the Joint Development Agency of the UN and the World Trade Organization. We are committed to supporting small businesses in developing countries to internationalize, especially women-led firms and youth entrepreneurs. It's my honor and my pleasure to moderate this discussion today on climate competitiveness. I need to inform you that this meeting is being recorded. And since we're in a meeting mode, I ask that everybody mute themselves except when presenting. So thank you very much for that. We have a very exciting panel discussion to look forward to. We'll have some representatives from small businesses themselves. We have the organizations that support them also, and we'll hear about solutions and challenges faced in becoming climate smart and how this can be converted into climate competitiveness. But before introducing you to the panel, I first would like to invite the Deputy Executive Director of the International Trade Center, Ms. Dorothy Tembo, to set the scene and welcome you all with her opening remarks. Ms. Tembo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Rivka. Always a pleasure to see you. Excellencies, distinguished participants, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whichever part of the world you're joining us. And I wanted to join Rivka in extending a warm welcome to this side event, which Rivka has elaborated in greater detail. I'm very, very excited to open this session on how micro, small, and medium-sized businesses, MSMEs as we often refer to them or call them, how MSMEs in developing countries can contribute to a climate-smart recovery and to the Agenda 2030 through partnerships and international trade. Climate change presents the greatest long-term threat to the global economy, one that will impact all aspects of human life, from food security to health, to infrastructure, to trade. And it is likely to also contribute to conflict, violence, migration, and social as well as political unrest. It is a fact that climate change impacts follow an equitable path. The most acute shifts are expected to occur in regions and countries with low incomes and lagging performance in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In some cases, there is some preliminary evidence of this already beginning to take effect. MSMEs in the most vulnerable countries where adaptive capacities may be lacking and where there are also limited public capacity for support are and will continue to bear the brunt of the climate change. Yet, MSMEs are not just climate takers, they are also climate makers. MSMEs are crucial for food security, job creation, and economic resilience, accounting for about 90% of businesses and more than 50% of employment worldwide. By implementing climate smart approaches, MSMEs can actually boost productivity by taking measures to adapt to climate change, contribute to emissions reduction by adopting greener production methodologies or methods, and act as a source of green innovation. For ITC, it is clear to us that MSMEs must be supported to take climate action for developing countries to meet their social, developmental, and economic needs. It is also clear for us that they can play an important role in helping developing countries lock in greener and low carbon growth and development trajectories, as well as support more ambitious climate commitments with a view to keeping the Paris Agreement's 1.5-degree goal alive. Trade is an integral part to these objectives as it increases access to climate mitigation and adaptation-related goods and services, and is an important transmission channel for the spread of climate-related standards that will shape supply chains of the future. This underscores why we at ITC are taking a laser-focused approach on supporting MSME's climate action. We are doing this through MSME capacity building, as well as connections to source of finance, climate technology providers, and new sustainable markets. In addition, ITC is actively working to improve the business ecosystem, enabling policymakers formulate and implement conducive policies, working with business support organizations to integrate climate-related service offerings, and with lead firms to drive sustainability through their supply chains. We are very delighted to highlight the perspectives of MSMEs at this important forum. Before I conclude, I wanted to extend a special thank you to all our panelists for agreeing to join us this morning to share your vast experiences from different perspectives. I also want to acknowledge the work that has been done by our partners in making sure that we have a successful delivery of this event. To all of you, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Dorothy, for those inspiring words and enlightening us with what ITC is doing in this area as well. I now turn to our panel for today's discussion. As Dorothy has mentioned, we are fortunate to have with us an exceptional panel of accomplished climate-smart small businesses and leaders in the business support organizations that help these companies to become climate competitive. And I have to say they come from around the world. We have, first of all, I'd like to introduce from Kenya, we have Ms. Yvonne Otieno, Chief Executive Officer of Miyonga Fresh Greens. Ms. Otieno is an award-winning social entrepreneur, an innovator, and a food waste warrior. So welcome, Yvonne. Second on our panel, from Peru, we have Mr. Gastón Vizcarra, the president of Candela. He is an economist. Thank you, Yvonne. He is an economist and an advocate for the sustainable use of Amazon ecosystems, and we'll hear more about that. Third, we have our entrepreneur from India, who is Mr. Vedant Gandhi. He's the co-founder of RecycleX and the 2021 winner of the ITC Youth Ecopreneur Awards. So welcome, Vedant. Good to have you here. But to be climate competitive, companies also need the support of an ecosystem of organizations. After hearing from the climate competitive entrepreneurs, we'll also hear from change makers in two business support organizations from Nepal and from Barbados. We're pleased to have with us Mr. Binayak Mala from Nepal, who's a sustainability expert who specializes in implementing climate resilience projects in MSMEs. Welcome, Binayak. We also have Mr. Brian Lee Chandler from Barbados, who is the National Project Coordinator in Barbados for the Caribbean Regional Project to improve the climate competitiveness in the coconut sector. So welcome both Binayak and Brian Lee. And thank you all for joining us. We will be providing speaker bios for each of the speakers as they present in the chat function. You can also use the chat function to share your questions for the panel members, and we'll address them towards the end of the event. But first of all, I'm going to ask one question to the panel members. They'll each have 5 minutes to respond to this. Panel members, thank you very much for being with us today. Welcome. To kick us off, I'd like to invite you all to share a brief introduction. Please tell us about your organizations and what climate competitiveness means to you. Again, you each have 5 minutes. So let's kick off with you, Yvonne.
Okay, thank you so much, Rafika. So it's an honor to be in this forum, and once again, I'll just share a bit about what Miyonga Fresh Greens is all about, and then talk about what climate competitiveness means to us. So Miyonga Fresh Greens is basically a company that was formed about 5 years ago. It's a women-owned business, and we work in the export of both fresh fruits, dried fruits, and powdered vegetables. So that's me and my sister. It's a women-owned company, and obviously working in the fresh fruits industry, it just does mean that climate has a lot to do with what we get to send into the market. So we are currently exporting dried fruits that we source from Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda to Europe. And this is mango, pineapple, coconut, and bananas. And one of the reasons that we've actually had to source the products from different regional countries is because of the climate effects that have the effects of climate change on one particular country, meaning you would need to source fruits from different regions to be able to secure your supply throughout the country. So that's one of the effects that climate change has had on us. But if you go to the next slide, I would say more directly the challenges that we have faced, and then share how we've actually been able to handle them. So obviously working in fresh fruits, there's floods that's leading to pests and diseases. The high temperatures, it just means that you're not able to do production of fruits efficiently. Then there's food waste that happens. You either have seasons when you have surplus fruits or seasons that you have very low production of fruits, and what that means is that you have shortage or you have losses. So that's a direct impact. Next slide, please. Additionally, to make even that more complex, is the poor infrastructure, the effects of climate in terms of the poor infrastructure. If there are floods on the road, you're unable to transport your products in good time. We've had instances, not just from us, but as well as from our competitors, where they've had their trucks actually stuck on the road for more than 1 or 2 days. That means there's no processing that's happening. Of course, when it comes to the planting part, the soil erosion has effects, and other stuff arriving late. And if you come to damaging the infrastructure, it just means that your factory will not be able to operate if you're actually relying on power. So what are the solutions that Miyonga has come up with to deal with some of these challenges? Next slide, please. Because we have we grow fruits in different climatical zones, this helps us to be competitive in the sense that we can then source, we actually have contracts with farmers and different climatical zones who then supply us with fruits. So that if a fruit is in season in this region, we're able to process it. Then we came up with a model known as Willing Fruits, which means it's just a mobile fruit factory that would go to different regions to process the fruits when the fruits are in season. Otherwise, we had case studies that were funded by people like the German Development Corporation that helped to show that there are very many idle companies where they have been funded, but at one part of the year, they're idle because there are no fruits available. And that just increases your operational costs. And then we are currently in the next stage of our program. We're trying to come up with a multi-fruit processing facility to be able to meet the current demand that we have for fruits and vegetables. So in Kenya, next slide, we're currently working in Taita Taveta. We are working in Taita Taveta. We just signed an agreement, and this is thanks to the Kenya School of Government, facilitated by Peter Quest, that's helping us to secure some land in Tana River to also start processing fruits in Tana River, which is a very remote part and suffers from floods in Kenya, but it has one of the best mangoes possible. And then the next stage is obviously one of the things that leads to waste is that we need to train farmers to make sure that they're collecting, next slide, that they're actually processing the correct type of products. Next slide. So to probably better show you what exactly how we have been competitive. We have been part of the program. This growth has not been by ourselves. We've been part of a Green to Complete program that was facilitated by ITC. And the video is actually going to be a demonstration of what impact this has had on our business. So video, please.
We began as a simple farm, just a family farm with 1.5 acres of land. And the reason we began it was first to try and create employment for our immediate family members. However, we realized that even in 1.5 acres of land, you need more than your family to work on the farm. So we started to employ women around the farm to work there. My name is Yvonne Otieno. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Miyonga Fresh Greens. When we took our first product to export, the customers liked it. At that point, we were only doing fresh. And then we realized as you were collecting the fresh fruits from the farmers, there was a lot more that was going to waste. So we had to come up with different ways. In just about 7 years, we've grown from that small 1.5 acres family farm to exporters of both fresh fruits, dried fruits, and powdered fruits to the European market. How did this happen? Well, it wasn't a journey that we took alone. Along that whole path, we had different partners. One of them, of course, the International Trade Center, that worked together with us to make sure that we could address the 3 problems that you were facing. Number 1, training the farmers to grow the correct variety of crops. Number 2, training the farmers to do the processing at the farm gate level. And thirdly, we had a co-funding partnership where they helped to invest in the cold room that is solar powered, as well as the solar powered miller. So these are partnerships that we would not have had we not been involved in the program. When we realized that farmers were actually losing a lot of product, we came up with an innovation known as Willing Fruits. So Willing Fruits is a mobile fruit company. It's a company that does processing of fruits at the farm gate level. We had a mentor who worked as our business coach. They helped us identify the challenges that you were facing. Number 1, the seasonality of fruits, which meant the seasons we had plenty and the seasons we had waste. They helped come up with a financial model. They worked together with us to just develop the model, make sure that it makes business sense. Because as much as you want to have impact in the community, you want to make sure it's sustainable. You also want to make sure that it makes financial sense.
Great. Thank you very much, Yvonne, for that presentation. Gastón, to you, same question. Please tell us about your organization or your business and what climate competitiveness means to you.
I think good morning with everybody. I understand you have my presentation. Could you put it on the screen, please? There you go. Thank you. Well, good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I understand we're all over the place now. So Candela is an organization 33 years old. We started working basically in the Amazon with what they call Brazil nuts, we called Amazon nuts. Could you put the next slide, please? This is our concept. We are a company, more than a company, we are an organization that works under the value chain approach. So we believe that there's a place for everybody in the chain to put in value and take that value of it and bring resources from our ecosystems all the way to the markets, right? And in that sense, here in this picture, you can see a researcher, you can see a customer, you can see a producer, we can see a trader, and you can see somebody that works on the forest. So the concept of value chain for us is very important because it gives a space to everybody in their own ecosystem and their own knowledge and their own expertise. So that's mainly our approach. And with that approach, the next please, we work basically with ingredients. So we work with ingredients that we develop and we process from the rainforest. We turn them out into oils, into butters, into powders. and those ingredients are offered to the market. But the whole key thing is, how do we deal with the supply chain? The most important thing is, for us, a chain means made of slots. Each slot has to be strong. If one of the slots doesn't work, the chain doesn't work. It's not a chain anymore. It could be anything, but not a supply chain. So in this concept, we believe that this is very important. Next, please. And behind this product are people, because we intervene in the forest. We go into the forest and take things from the forest. We take resources all the time from the forest, and people are living from that. If those people don't have enough income for their livelihoods, they start to break down the forest. There's no other way. They have to chop trees, they have to do anything to survive. So it's very important, how do we approach the relationship with these producers? So what I'm trying to explain here is our model to deal with an ecosystem, because in this climate change crisis we live now, for me, to be honest, climate change is a very big word. It just takes all over. Different areas of our daily life are affected by climate change. So we have decided to focus on biodiversity. And that's our challenge, because if we think in global, I feel overwhelmed. So I prefer to focus on what we can do as our strategy and contribute to that, and be sure that we're doing the right thing. Next, please. So here's a little bit of Candela numbers, right? We are connected with different value chains. We have international customers, national customers. We have certifications as a mean of continuous improvement. No? Next, please. And these are the value chains we work in Peru. Basically, we work in Peru, right? And more in the forest, a little bit in the highlands. But we deal with different value chains, and our approach, as I was telling you, is deal directly with producers, and with them find out what are the needs, what are the challenges, what can we do together, what can we bring, basically. And if supply chain is different, of course, each one has their own particularities, right? But we are very focused on the Amazon more and more, because I believe that this ecosystem is so important and so strong, so powerful, that we have to really take care of it, because it's very, even though it's very powerful, it's very, I would say, not weak, it's very fragile. If you move something here, you are moving a lot of things in other places in this ecosystem. It's very interesting, but that's the challenge. And we work directly with native communities, with associations, with private, little small owners of plots. We work basically focused on the food and the cosmetic markets that are hopefully growing, for natural products. There's a trend now for natural products. So that's what we do, basically build strong supply chains. The next, please. And these certifications, why do we certify? We certify because there are ways of continuous progress. If you comply with the standard, then you're doing right things on your supply and your factory, and dealing with people, and dealing with environment, and dealing with emissions, all of this. And on the other hand, guarantees the consumers that you are doing something that is supervised, that is monitored by a third party, because there's a lot of greenwashing in the world now, and I think it's important to be sure that we are dealing with the right supplier. So a way to support us and a way to demonstrate we are there is using this kind of certifications that also helps us to maintain our standards. The next, please. This is our strategy, basically. So for one side, secure the Amazon supply chains, and the other side, improve in quality and efficiency. In the third side, maintain our sustainability economically wise, right? And the fourth is promote our identity and generate legality. One of the major problems you face on the rainforest is the land tenure and the use of resources is very informal. It generates corruption, right? So to generate legality, to generate, I would say, be proud of what you can do on the forest is very important. The next, please. And here are our sustainability policies. We have developed our own policies on sustainability. And here are a few examples of what kind of things we do. For example, we have a reforestation program that plants trees every year in the areas that are degraded on the forest. We're promoting biodynamic systems of cultivation on the areas of where there's Brazilians, where there's coposu and other producers. So no chemicals, more productive yields on the production. These new technologies, not new, but not very well known technology, we promote that. We do environmental education to our staff, so people has to understand what are we dealing with. Many people know that something is happening, but they know exactly how to deal with that and how to understand it better, how to connect. So we are working on this education with our own staff. As I was telling you, institutional strengthening, we work basically with generating contracts with people, looking for legal access to their land, Other thing we do is we are building new value chains in the forest. There's a value chain we just discovered in Peru, it's called Muru Muru. It wasn't explored here, we're working on that. We're investing in infrastructure to be able to be more secure on the supply. We're trying to
Gastón, can I ask you to wrap up now, please, if you don't mind? Thank you.
Well, basically, I was showing the efforts we do, right? And well, the next one is saying thank you.
Thank you very much. We will definitely hear more from you.
Okay.
So thank you for that. Now I'd like to hand over to Vedant. So we're crossing from Peru, from the Amazon, over to India, to the other side of the world. Vedant, over to you.
Hello everyone, I'm Vedant Gandhi, co-founder at RecycleX. Cherry, can you please play the video? We often think cars and factories are major drivers of pollution, but a huge emitter of CO2 is cement. Building homes and skyscrapers with thousands of tons of concrete, steel and other materials is major contribution to pollution. Every year, 66 billion square feet of buildings are constructed. Concrete alone is responsible for 8% of the global CO2 emissions. Another grappling problem we have in today's world is absence of effective waste management. It is estimated that India generates 4.5 million tons of single-use plastic and 180 million tons of carbon waste annually. I grew up watching construction all around me. The whole process made me question what development means. What if there is a way we can make more sustainable housing? Then we started our research towards finding a sustainable solution. My co-founder Abhishek and I came up with RecycleX. RecycleX is changing the green building industry by its innovative products made from plastic, industrial and construction waste. We are not only utilizing waste as our raw material, but also our manufacturing process is carbon negative. We are developing innovative, low-cost, eco-friendly building products like bricks and blocks that help reduce greenhouse gases. RecycleX uses plastic waste picked by rag pickers to supporting the livelihood and education for the children. We have an equal ratio of men and women working on our manufacturing plant. RecycleX aims to work on United Nations Sustainable Development Goal of gender equality. For me, an ideal world would be developing self-sustainable green cities and a plastic-free world where we can live in harmony with nature.
Thanks for the really good video by ITC. So,
Thank you, Vedant.
Can you share the PPT?
Yeah. Would you like to say a few words as well? Or we wait for the questions?
Oh, I can just share the PPT also, so I can just give.
Oh, yes, of course, yes.
I can share the. Is it visible, right? So when we think that releases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we often think cars and factories, but a huge emitter of CO2 is cement. Do you even think which are the most used material on earth by mankind? It's water and concrete. Every year, 66 billion square feet of buildings are constructed. The embodied carbon emissions of this construction is almost 3.8 million metric tons. The built environment generates 50% of global CO2 emissions. Of these, just three materials, concrete, steel, and aluminum, are responsible for 23% of total global emissions. We must eliminate all this CO2 by this built environment by 2040 to meet 1.5-degree climate targets. Concrete is responsible for 8% of global emissions. And we also continue to replicate our urbanize in the coming decade. But this concrete is using for development of our cities is sustainable. Development doesn't mean to compare the cost of environment. It is estimated that India generates 4.5 million tons of single-use plastics and also generates 180 million tons of waste every year. The impact of such pollution continues to rapidly emerge. The health of citizens is being impacted by this pollution. Recycling is revolutionizing the green building sector by manufacturing bricks and paver blocks made from plastic waste, industrial waste, and construction waste. We are not only utilizing waste as our raw material, but also our manufacturing process carbon negative. Our technology enables the production of cement-free products used by a process called as decarbonization, where we are using waste from industries like steel and various thermal power stations. At our manufacturing plant, we employ 30 migrant workers. We fulfill the needs of these migrant workers by connecting with various government schemes of health and accidental insurance. Let us everyone pledge for housing for all by 2050 with goals of reuse, reduce, and sequester. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vedant. Now we've heard from our entrepreneurs. I'd like to turn to our business support ecosystem. Binayak, I'll give you the floor first. So we're switching from, not going too far now, from India to Nepal.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Let me share my screen. Is it visible? So I'm Binayak Mullah. I'm assistant professor at Kathmandu University. I've been working with ITC since last 7 years. I've been leading many projects with ITC. Among them, one is Green to Compete Hub, Nepal. So we have implemented various modules in terms of making SMEs more sustainable. And one of those modules were related to climate resilience of SMEs, how to develop climate resilience among the SMEs of Nepal. So I'll be talking a bit about it in a while. But before that, I would like to introduce you all to my country, Nepal. Nepal is in South Asia. It's a landlocked country. We have India in 3 sides and China on the north. So India being east, west, and south. In the picture, what you can see is in the context of climate, Nepal has huge diversity from tropical forests at the very south, tropical climate, to alpine in the middle, and on the top we have like snow-capped mountains. So this gives us a sense of how vulnerable we are to the climate change. We also have highest amount of rainfall coming in the eastern part of Nepal from the monsoon, whereas the southern western part is very dry. So in last 200 years, what we have experienced as a country is a huge shift in increase in temperature. So as you can see it in the figure, like in last 200 years, the climate, the change in temperature has been quite significant. This change has caused a lot of vulnerability, not just to the natural diversity that we have in our country, but also to the SMEs and businesses that are operating there. So Green to Compete Hub was introduced in Nepal in 2019. So we implemented this in partnership with Agro Enterprise Center, which is a branch of FNCCI in Nepal. What we did with this project was we engaged with SMEs in 4 different sectors. So it was tea, coffee, medicinal and aromatic plants, and tourism sector. So these were, there were 40 MSMEs from these 4 sectors. And the reason why we choose each of these sectors were based on the diversity that we have in the country. So maps are more from the southern part of Nepal, which has a very tropical climate, whereas tea and coffees are grown in more middle part of Nepal, and on the other hand, tourism, which is what Nepal is very famous for, is based on high mountains. So we wanted to see what sort of impact these SMEs are having because of climate change. So what we did was we adopted a very different module. In fact, it was unique in itself in the case of Nepal. We used the model developed by a climate expert, where we not just talked about like what are the risks associated with climate change and SMEs, but also we try to define those risks and try to see how these risks can be converted into opportunities. What are the costs involved when we convert these risks into opportunities, so that SMEs can have sustainable way of doing business in long run. So and in this 4-stage process, what we can observe here is like at the end of these interventions, we try to help our SMEs, saying like these risks are there, but if you use certain tools and techniques to mitigate this risk and be more climate friendly and adaptive, you can in fact sustain your business for long run using sustainable business strategies. So the findings were quite interesting in terms of like what we were able to do was we were able to find what are the climate impact each of these sectors are having, and we were able to define, let's say, these climate impact being rise in temperature, increase in pests and insects, so loss of biodiversity when it comes to map sector, seasonal shift. This is very important because Nepal has 5 different seasons, and change in one season, for example, rainy season, which is often called as monsoons. If the monsoon is arriving, faster, earlier than normal time, the SMEs faces a lot of challenges to overcome that. So these are the climate impact that we identify. So also intense change in temperature, for example, too hot and also too cold happening in the same year, heavy rainfall. So these were climate impact. And then we suggested them very simple, yet very innovative way of tackling these impacts and making them more resilient to, climate change, and also being more adaptive. So these interventions look very simple, but, these SMEs had very less ideas how to do it, and how to manage these resources. For example, I would say installation of solar pumping for irrigation, construction of rainwater harvesting system. So I mean, they are dependent so much in rainwater, you know, but if there is no rainwater, if there's a drought for one season, you know, they would not know what to do. So these were the simple techniques, yet very innovative way of intervention. But most important of all these interventions were to let them know how best they can use those resources, right? So I will not be talking much about it. I mean, I'll be happy to answer more questions. For now, I'll stop here.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Vinayak. And last but certainly not least, we're now shifting back across to the Western Hemisphere to Brian Lee Chandler, who's based in Barbados. Please go ahead, Brian. Brian Lee.
Thanks. A moment. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Lee Chandler. I'm from Barbados, and I'm here to give a presentation on this important issue which revolves around SMEs, how SMEs can become more resilient and competitive, given the fact that there's climate change that can also present a new challenge for them. So I'll begin by saying that I am the National Coordinator for Barbados under the Caribbean Alliance for Action Coconut Project, which is designed at developing the coconut industry in the Caribbean amongst 12 Caribbean countries, Barbados included, so that we can actually fill the gaps that exist within the multi-billion-dollar coconut industry. The European market and the North American market have a large demand for coconut products, and we want to just fill those gaps. So we work with a number of value chain operators along the coconut area, the industry, and we train them to be more competitive by giving them tools through training exercises and activities to become more competitive to meet market demands. Regarding coconuts, as we have projected coconuts as they ramp up in numbers through several activities, one of which would be importing new planting material and planting them out, we would expect an increase in coconut waste. And what do we do with that coconut waste? Coconut waste, if left untouched, it will create a number of environmental and social problems. So the international community is placing and requiring SMEs to be more circular in their approach when it comes to their operations and utilize resources that would have none otherwise been not utilized and end up on the garbage heap. So this also helps, as we recognize these SMEs to become more competitive and have a lesser carbon footprint on their, within the economy and the ecology of their operation. And in this case, Barbados being a Caribbean island, we are small and we are impacted by climate change largely. And if these actions are not put in place, it can have a negative effect on us, such as greater hurricanes, tsunamis. Well, that's a bit extreme, but we lay in the hurricane belt. So global warming does have a large impact on us with supernormal hurricanes coming our way. So the way forward for us is to utilize this resource, which is the coconut husk in one case. There are a number of derivatives that can come from coconut husk. And we are focusing right now on using coconut husk to produce biomethane and digest it using the bioreactor technology. And this technology breaks down the coconut husk into smaller particulates, and it goes through the normal process as when we eat our food, and the gases exchanges take place within ourselves. That is the biomethane, which is the equivalent to natural gas, which is a green product coming from the process, and digested So I'll talk a bit about the two quickly before I go into a video that I think you guys would like. So the biomethane can be used for heating purposes, as well as the generation of electricity. This lowers the cost of production for SME. And then the digestate can also act as an additional form of generating revenue, while holding firm to this concept of circularity and upcycling, taking one product and that would have been considered waste and making it into a new product, which is basically a new means of generating revenue for that enterprise. The way forward, we are working with the NCC, which is National Conservation Commission, and a number of other stakeholders to create a mini system where we would do our testing and so forth to see if coconut waste indeed can be proven to be an input to this process. And we have recently been incorporated with another larger entity called Circular Fuels, which I'm also part and parcel of as a consultant, which would help Barbados see an addition to its energy performance and moving away from fossil fuel to produce, let me step back a little bit so I make myself very clear. There's something called the Barbados National Energy Policy, which is a national policy which directs Barbados to be more reliant on renewable energy forms by the year 2030. So this project kind of snuggles nicely into that. And this particular project is supposed to make about 7 megawatts of renewable energy, which Barbados seeks to achieve and move away from fossil fuels by the year 2030, as I had said. So without any further ado, I would like to move into the presentation, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Rick Sellers, the CEO of Circular Fuels. I'm here on the pier in Bridgetown, Barbados, a Caribbean island with a vibrant history and a vibrant people and challenges due to climate change and ocean level rise. Our bioenergy project is going to solve a lot of problems for the island and produce clean energy and organic fertilizer.
The process is called anaerobic digestion. Here in Barbados, we produce a number of wastes from various sources: municipal waste, food waste, and agricultural waste from farms, and even natural waste such as grasses from the natural environment. We can now take these wastes and, through the use of anaerobic digestion technology, convert those wastes into valuable commodities.
The project is located on the Spring Garden Highway, next to a fossil terminal. As Barbados transitions away from fossil fuels, the intention for us is to use renewable forms of energy. What this means is that when the plant decommissions using fossil fuels, it will turn to renewable forms of energy, such as biogas. The site is a perfect location to receive the distillery's waste through underground pipes and deliver heat to it. The adjacent power plant behind here is a perfect location to attach our energy to the national grid of Barbados.
The project began when my friend Alexander Gabriel asked me to find a way to transform the distillery waste into heat. We did so, and by doing that, we found that we could take other waste materials and incorporate them to produce also green electricity and fertilizer.
A second byproduct from the anaerobic digestion process is digestate. The digestate can function as a fertilizer. We've done some experiments here at the university where we've used the digestate on corn plants, and we were able to double the growth of the corn plants in a given period of time. Our fertilizer digestate from this process contains water, and it can replenish the water in the water table.
The plant will be built to the highest international standards, where it saves foreign exchange to fossil fuel purchases and creates about 60 new jobs. More importantly, it encourages good waste management practices, which in fact would delay the need to expand the mangrove landfill. The green electricity is competitively priced baseload energy, which is of benefit and key to the utility. The utility currently uses intermittent forms of electricity derived from solar and wind. As the island's population and key stakeholders learn about this important project, it has received nothing else but positive review.
We'd like to invite you to be part of our anaerobic digestive project in Spring Garden, Barbados. If you have a passion for environmental stewardship and for economic development for local communities, we think you'll have a passion for our project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian Lee, for sharing that information about how you are turning not only competitiveness in the coconut industry, but also turning coconut waste into energy. We're looking forward to hearing more about that. So we've heard a lot from our speakers about very diverse and interesting projects, including eco-friendly construction material, fruit products, this coconut waste, biodiversity in the Amazon. Why don't we now engage a little bit in and shift to a bit more of a discussion with them. Let's start with our entrepreneurs. I'd like to start with Yvonne and Gastón. You both have businesses in agriculture and biodiversity-based business, so you're very strongly reliant on natural resources. Tell us a bit more about how climate change affects your business today and how you've experienced climate action measures or implementing climate action measures. We'll start with you, Yvonne.
Okay, thank you so much, Rafika. So for me, it's very much pretty straightforward. Number one, for us to do any production, we're basically relying on a lot of rain-grown products. We don't have too much of irrigation happening. It is picking up in the country. However, a lot of our farmers are smallholder farmers. This means that somebody who probably has 1 acre or less, and on that 1 acre, they do have their farm, they're growing their
Oh, I think Yvonne is frozen. Maybe the connection's not that great. Or is it my connection? No, it is Yvonne. Yvonne, are you there? If not, let's go to Gastón. Gastón, for you, the same question. You have touched on it a bit, but how does climate change affect your business today, and what if you can share any experience in implementing climate action measures?
Well, we are a different kind of business because we deal with the results of biodiversity, right? So, for example, 2018, there was too much rain, were not expected. There was a drought in the rainforest, it was not expected, and the yield of the trees dropped over 50%. So, if you had a plot of 500 hectares of forest to take away 100 sacks of Brazil nuts, you got 40. You got, and not only in Peru, but all the Amazon area where Brazil nut grows. So it affected completely the offer, the price went rocket high. The customers were very angry. They didn't want to buy. They delisted our products. Next year, they didn't know they want to buy products. So it affected completely the supply and the demand and the trade with this product based on a result of climate change. So climate change is very powerful in these areas, in the rainforest. But basically what we do with this, basically we speak with the producers and explain them that they mustn't, put waste on the rainforest. They have to take the batteries out. They have to deal with plastic. Where do they put the fuel? Not to, just take care of the environmental practices on the air, because there's very little to do in the forest in front of 500 hectares of forest, right? The idea is not to chop down trees, but they need money. So it's a very fine line there that how to address this impact that humans can make on the forest, right? But basically, long-term agreements, training, finance, all of these things help to people to support themselves to be able to continue with the industry, basically, no? Yeah.
So basically to also help the forest keep growing, to protect
Yeah.
what you called earlier that fragile link.
Yeah. Yes.
Great.
That's
No,
our responsibility. Much more than that, we cannot really do with this huge ecosystem, no?
appreciate that. I understand that Yvonne is back. Yvonne, we're sorry that we lost you. Can you hear me again?
Yes, I can hear you, and thanks again for the opportunity. And just as Gastón was talking, he's actually talking about part of the things that we've had to do to deal with those challenges, where, of course, the training is very important. The partnership is extremely important. And there's also the transparency in information. Because at the end of the day, as I was talking about, number one, we've had to work with various number of farmers just to meet our volumes of supply, to be able to then meet the demand that we currently have in Europe. So one of the things that has worked very well for us is having a transparency system where we can work very clearly and openly with our buyers and actually let them know where our products are coming from, who the farmers are that are growing it. Because at the end of the day, business is more than just about profits, it's about the people. So we have a traceability system that then helps us to be able to trace the product right up to the producers and show what impact it has when you actually buy the product and what it has in terms of the farmer. And we're talking about impact, we're talking about more than just the immediate income that they earn, because a lot of our farmers are women, and women are known to be able to invest part of their income in improving their lives of their families. So it's about investing also in the future generations. And the transparency in our system has actually helped us get some very good customers. And our product, if I actually mention it, we're actually selling it in Europe at the moment. One of our partners in Germany are selling it through our web shop and have registered our product with our own brand. And this is partly due to the transparency and us telling them this is what happens when you actually buy the product. This is where it is produced from. This is who's going to be impacted from you actually buying the product. Thank you.
Great, so real product differentiation there also. If I can turn to Vedant now. Vedant, your business is quite different, where you focus on reducing emissions actually. How do you respond to climate change?
So like in India, still people are using the typical red clay bricks. So if there's an estimate like 380 tons of carbon emissions per year by 1 million of clay bricks are made by burning it. But a lot of real estate players and a lot of government are using green building products, so they can get a lot of tax benefits when they are developing sustainable cities. So for us, like, we are transiting various reducing carbon emissions and also implementing various smart technologies on our production lines, like using solars for generating electricity for running the manufacturing plant. So in that way we are transiting towards carbon negative manufacturing process. So there are a lot of green labels available, so that's a good way of branding what we are doing on our products. And also if you see, like, we are making building a strong foundation for a circular economy, and so it makes supply chain very easy for us for procuring this industrial waste from various industries.
No, thanks for that. And I noticed the issue of certification came up in a few different presentations. It seems like a recurrent theme also. So I want to go back to Yvonne and Gastón. You guys mentioned a few things in common of things that are supportive for your business. You mentioned transparency information, you mentioned finance, you mentioned training, the support for certification. If I could ask you, what kind of additional support, building on this or even deepening this, do you think your business needs if we're going to advance in this area of climate competitiveness? Maybe I'll start with Gastón this time, since we started with Yvonne the last time.
Thank you. Well, for me, two things are very important. One of them is bureaucracy and legality. and governmental, I would say, ability to generate these opportunities. There are many, many people living from the forest that have no legal rights to them, even though they live them forever, communities, right? And to get documentation to be able to move products from the forest legally, you need this kind of backing up by legal ownership or concessions or contracts with the government. And that is really a mess. And what that generates, unfortunately, is corruption and informality, because people need to live. Years they're waiting for, to get legal support to be able to approach to this. That's one. And the other thing is, honestly, you hear a lot that there's a lot of resources, financial resources out there to promote the use of your biodiversity, to fight climate change. But that the path it goes through, also, again, sometimes you don't know where to go, what you need to do. It's very government to government, and it stays there. Probably other governments are more efficient, I don't know. But in our case, we see that there's a lot of support, international support, but doesn't, trickle down to the production level. Basically, those two things, I would say, could be a little different.
No. Thank you, Gastón. How about you, Yvonne? Would you want to build on anything you mentioned before? Or maybe something Gastón has mentioned about what additional support is needed to continue down this path of climate competitiveness?
Well, one of the support that obviously it doesn't seem like it's support, but just people like ITC giving us platforms where we can share our challenges is actually part of, advocacy that's is actually helpful. And then, as I said, as our business, remember, we had an idea. It was more or less of a pilot project. We did not know, we didn't have the funds to actually even start it. So just by being a part of a program that's through ITC, that helps us have access to financiers who could actually invest in your idea. I mean, you were literally just a seed. You are not even a plant. And the support that we got from people like the Water and Energy for Food, who funded part of the project, the support that we got from people like Synapis, who helped us to make the business possible. So if there could be some stronger partnership and maybe a database of all these organizations and that actually help to train entrepreneurs first for the skills, and secondly, know where, if I am an entrepreneur, I want to employ some climate smart technologies in my program, where can I find that information? And of course, having, giving entrepreneurs like us who are quite small opportunities to speak in such forums, it then tells you how many more Yvonnes are out there that are actually having an idea, but don't have the financing to be able to actualize and pilot that idea. So more support, more partnership, of course, in the trainings, and yes, give entrepreneurs the voice to actually speak in such forums and advocate for more support for other entrepreneurs who might not have the opportunity. Thank you.
No, thank you, Yvonne. I think that's great. And I hear also what you're saying about being a kind of a connector between things. So you need that glue that connects you to whether it be the finance or the market partner or it's very interesting. And in fact, it ties very nicely to what I want to ask Vedant. Vedant, you're a young entrepreneur. You're an award-winning young entrepreneur. How would you, and you have this very innovative solution, how would you encourage other entrepreneurs, whether they be young or not, how would you encourage them to contribute to climate action through their business? Using your voice now.
There are many ideas and solutions that tackle climate change, but the main challenge is to understand the local community, what local community are looking for. So there are need of innovative solutions that tackle climate actions, seeing the current scenario of developing countries, and the programs like ITC Youth Ecopreneur Award, which gives a lot of motivations to young entrepreneurs to develop their business ideas, not only just with the financial support, but working on your business plan. If a young entrepreneurs, they want to do something into green manufacturing, but they don't know how to scale up the business. So the program like this Youth Ecopreneur Award, which will which will help them out, to work on their business plans, or who are their main customers, what kind of community would they want to engage in. So there are a lot of, youth creativity to serve the communities, like to make, daily lifestyle more affordable and more, easy for local communities. And there are a lot of new sectors coming in where youth, where new young mind can involve themselves into business, like recycling and CO2 absorptions and alternative energies. So there are so many new green ideas where they can work on, and definitely they can always take help from such kind of program from ITC and United Nations program.
Great. No, thanks very much. So we've heard from three very inspiring entrepreneurs doing different things related to climate competitiveness. I'd now like to turn to our business support organizations. Binayak and Brian Lee, thanks for joining us. You both work very closely with the SMEs in your regions, and you support them to increase their competitiveness and their resilience in the face of climate change, but also then to switch that up and to become more competitive as a result. Binayak, you've spoken in your presentation, you shared a bit about the diversity of this small country of Nepal in terms of climate. Are there any challenges that you find are unique to SMEs in Nepal, being in a landlocked country in the Himalayas?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rafika, for the question. I think what we need to understand is like Nepal is not just a landlocked. It's a landlocked by two giant, countries like China and India. China being the, number one in terms of greenhouse gas emission, whereas which contributes like 20% of total greenhouse gas emission, whereas India being the fourth in terms of 5%, right? So this has created huge challenge, particularly in terms of climate change, because we are losing our biodiversity. We are losing the pattern in which, we used to have different seasons in our country. Now, this has two effects. First, it has a big natural, effect. For example, our Himalayan glaciers, which are at risk, and they can, burst out anytime, causing huge, damage to our infrastructure. That could be very detrimental for SMEs. The second would be these climate change, particularly, it could sound very simple for normal people. Rain is not coming this month, but it might come next month. This could have a huge impact in SMEs because these rains, they depend on these natural rain. They don't have proper irrigation, they don't have proper system of rainwater collection. So, they are facing so much of challenges, also not just, being dependent on natural climate, but also depending on the poor infrastructure, particularly finances support, So it's a huge thing for SMEs. And I would say, if we are not able to address this challenge, on a global front, we would lose more SMEs. Just to let you know, like Nepal has 275,000 SMEs. It accounts for like 98% of businesses in our country, right? So the climate change is a huge issue. Heavy rainfall, flood, or even dry seasons. These are all affecting SMEs, And the result, the consequences, I must say, is what we see today. Our country it used to be agriculture-based economy for SMEs, but now are based more on remittance, So our youth, our young people are going abroad because they don't find the right kind of environment to do businesses in the country. So these are the challenges, Rafika, that we face in small landlocked country like Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Binayak, for sharing that. Brian Lee, you've shared with us your exciting example of turning coconut waste into energy. Talk to us a bit about the business benefits of these sorts of processes, of being climate smart. It's not just about protecting the environment, it's also good for business, right? Or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. So I'll use a case study with one of our businesses that we work closely with. It's called West Indian Rum Distilleries, and they're actually the business that initiated or asked for this project with regards to the development of a large bioreactor project to come to fruition. And for them, it is important to have a green footprint when it comes to reaching their markets in the international community, because the international community is demanding much more from big businesses to be more environmentally conscious, and it also adds a premium to the product. So they not only are earning much more for becoming more green, they're also being good stewards to the environment. And in that, using a circular approach. So let me give you a little bit more background to West Indian Rum Distilleries. ITC worked with them to bring a farmer to West Indian Rum Distilleries to have an agreement where they can have a business-to-business relationship, where the farmer supplies West Indian Rum Distilleries with dry coconuts, which we have to import, by the way. But in this case, the farmer agreed to allocate a portion of his holdings and coconut palms to help West Indian Rum Distilleries produce what we now call the cut and dry coconut rum. It's a fantastic product. I've tasted it. I'm not an alcoholic or a drinker of any sorts, but it will make anyone want to drink the product. But having all said that, the company has not only created a circularity in a community with a farmer by using his products, but using also potentially now his waste that will come from that production or that exchange, where he now can produce. Both parties have a mutually beneficial relationship. The overall project with regards to the bioreactor will also use other waste products that we find problematic. We have a high import bill in Barbados. All the other Caribbean countries have a high import bill. And we import more than 80% of what we consume, and 50% of that ends up on the landfill. And all of that greenhouse gas, when it's disposed, goes into the atmosphere, and it destroys further the atmosphere, right? So having that circular stewardship, I think, benefits then businesses to recognize that they're playing a good role in reducing the impact of climate change, global warming, and addressing the needs of the international market, who is more informed about what's going on, especially the health and wellness segment of the market out there. They're the driving force behind products that are recognized as wholesome, fresh, and the companies respect the environment in which they gain their resource from. We use more than 1.5% more than what we are supposed to use in producing products, and to recognize that we can be more circular in our approach as opposed to more linear is beneficial. So this is where we're going towards. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you very much, Brian Lee, for sharing that. And the idea of not only reducing production costs and differentiating differentiating your product so you can get a premium for that product, but also being a better environmental steward. So that's a great example. Now, to you both, Binayak and Brian Lee, you both work with a number of SMEs in a number of sectors, it sounds like, too. What do you think, would you say, what do your SMEs need to increase their competitiveness and their resilience to help future-proof their businesses in these times of change, in these times of fragility, and in these times of climate change also? Maybe I'll start with whoever wants to go first. Maybe Brian Lee, start with you first.
I'll go first since my colleague went first last time. Yes, I would say for this to come to fruition, I believe And I mean, everyone should know this. It needs a lot of political will from the governments and support from an institutional perspective. It's not a one thing, a one size fits all solution, but the fundamentals would be political will, financing, and a hero. It needs a hero such as the European Union, ITC, CARDI, all of the different international bodies coming together with these agendas that are designed to benefit small, medium, and micro enterprises to become better at what they do in the face of climate change and other prohibitive factors, right? I mean, it's a chronic thing for small, medium-sized enterprises to always be tackling the rising cost of fossil fuels. What are we going to do in the next couple of years? In interruptions in food supply chains. What are we going to do in the next couple of years if this continues? It's like, how can you expect to continue to do the same thing over and over and expect some marvelous change? So actions that ITC is doing right now under the in its coconut project, which is sponsored by the European Union, I can see tangibly something happening and not relying totally on government for their political will to kick in, but having more support from a number of actors and support agencies. So the Alliance for Action format does work. I've seen it work for myself. I practice it, and I think that's the way forward. I mean, it's just that simple. Sorry for my passion, but it's a passionate thing for me.
No, it's very infectious. Thank you very much for sharing that. So we need political will, we need financing, we need a hero,
yes,
and we need alliances. Okay, we got it. Vinayak, what would you say from your experience working with the SMEs in Nepal?
Yeah, I totally agree with Brian Lee in terms of macro perspective. But what I would also like to add is we should also think of redesigning our business model for SMEs, because SMEs normally, have a very traditional business model, which is more of a shareholder's perspective. But now, given the climate change, topic related with sustainability, I guess we should rethink of redesigning the business model of SMEs to make it more sustainable. So there's this concept called sustainable business model. So that should be introduced so that, these SMEs right from the day one could become very environmental friendly. They could respect, when they are thinking of making a product, they could think of how best they can recycle the waste of their product, right? So the whole circular economic concept. They would also need, talking about SMEs from our part of the world, there are two other things. For example, awareness, right? Awareness of the fact that climate change is real, and what they used to have it in past. For example, a very set seasons where rain used to come, particularly in certain months. That is not going to happen. Climate change is real and it is changing our world. It might take another 10, 15, 50 years for us to maybe come back to normality, or we might not come. But these SMEs need to work on how best to adopt, climate adaptive measures in order to make them more resilient, right? So this could be simple techniques, right? This could be simple methods like what our entrepreneurs have shared. I'm quite impressed because cement brick, it's a huge thing, right? And what Vedant has mentioned, his techniques, his innovation is something that could be replicable, right? So why not do it in a larger scale? So these should be the initiatives that we need to take. SMEs needs to have it, And the last fact is, in terms of SMEs from our part of world again, they are very risk adverse, meaning, they take it for granted. If things are not happening, maybe nature is not in our favor, right? Maybe we need to do something good, in terms of praying or so. My point is like, they have to start being more proactive, take actions in terms of trying to find solution to the problem rather than, just being complacent and thinking like, things will change, right? things won't change. We have to make it change. So these are small things, but I guess if we take it to the larger scale, let's say 275,000 SMEs, it will matter. It will make a difference.
The scale brings impact. Thanks very much. I see your hand, Brian Lee, but I also know we've had a very active chat. So I want to go to them if you don't mind. I'm going to use my power as moderator to say, let's bring in the audience.
I just really wanted to say one thing.
Okay, 10 seconds, please.
Less than 10 seconds. One thing I forgot to mention is that we need to focus also on insurance policies that help cover small, medium enterprises, because in a country like Barbados, when there's a storm or a hurricane and it flattens the entire country, your investment is lost. So you need some sort of mechanism to help spread that loss or shift that loss, and have some ways you can then restart from scratch. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, great. No, excellent point. Insurance, risk management support, for sure. I want to turn to my colleague, Michelle Lauberg, who's also from ITC. She's been monitoring the chat function. So thank you very much for providing your questions. Michelle, do we have any questions for our panel? And if you could read them out and perhaps direct them to whoever it's most relevant for.
Sure, we do have a number of questions. One is a comment, which I'll read the comment. So this is from Felipe Rubazangabo from Rwanda. And he said the climate change has affected coffee production due to heavy rain that causes cherries to fall prematurely, especially in 2019 in the southern province. So that's a comment. And there's 5 questions, and a number of them have been covered. So I'll read the ones. Should I just read? Maybe I'll just choose 2. Here's one from Salil Bangura. How can we nurture climate entrepreneurship in technology and innovation for climate actions for SMEs, especially in the African context? So a question around technology and innovation. And a related questions from Stephen and Gino, which this might be more directed to Yvonne. How can we reduce the dependency on rainwater for growing crops? What is an effective, affordable technology for developing countries that can mitigate this problem? And then here's another question from Mark Sheffer from the Baha'i International Community. How many, if any, of the speakers' businesses are structured as nonprofits? What do they see as the relationship between social and ecological goals and traditionally understood profit motive? So those
Should we just start with those, because we only have 7 minutes left, and I know people will be going to the main session of the HLPF. So Yvonne, can I ask you to try and address maybe the first 2, so the dependency on rainwater and innovation in the African context for climate? Would you mind taking those 2?
Yes, in terms of innovation in the African context, the answer would be pretty much straightforward, because we're part of the Green to Complete Innovation Hub. So if you have your ideas, join such innovation hubs that will then help nurture it and work out your financial model, and you can try it out. And then when it comes to dependency on rainfall, yes, that is a very big challenge. However, and there are lots of investments that do help to actually, or innovations that help to take care of that problem. So you can have systems of solar powered irrigation and all. But the real investments that is actually required to make credible change is huge. So the question then becomes, what are the linkages that are available for people who do want to switch from rain-reliant agriculture to irrigation systems? That's what we should be looking at. And are there organizations that are willing to partner? Our farmers will be happy, more than happy to be part of such programs.
Thanks, Yvonne. And since you do have the floor, the question on your company structure, are you a not-for-profit or are you're a company, right?
Structure, we are a for-profit company. Yes. It's a limited company. However, we are a social enterprise. That means a big percentage of our profits go back towards improving the community. And this has only been possible because we've had to partner with various development organizations that then invest in what a traditional type of financing doesn't invest in, with like issues to do with training, which is very key in the long run, but the returns are not immediate. So in the end, we still structure our business as a for-profit, because you're not making any profits. You're not going to be sustainable in the long run. You're not going to be able to reinvest back into the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Binayak?
I'm a non-profit organization. I can tell you a bit about that. But basic is about, right now is about ethics. Somebody that wants to do something like, transform a resource into a product, of course, there's an investment, and you are adding value to that, and you are entitled to withdraw if you want profits. In our case, what we do is we generate value, and that value, we put it back on our organization, right? We work with producers, we do infrastructure, whatever. But the bottom line here is, what kind of company does not now understand that has to incorporate biodiversity, climate change, take care of the resources? As the lady said about sustainability on time, you need to incorporate those things into your business model. If you don't do that, well, you're going to look at the end, but it's a very short-term approach. I think it's more than an ethical approach of more than making profit or not making profit, or who takes the profit. No? Yeah. Thank you.
Fair point, Gastón. So ethics as the guide. I'm not sure. Binayak, I was going to ask you if you wanted to answer the question on rainfall also.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, there are different techniques in terms of, not being dependent on rainfall. But the point is like, how best to introduce those techniques and how to make it more contextual, right? So in our part of the world, there could be either heavy rainfall causing floods, right? Or there could be drought. So in those situations, what would be the best solution, right? So rainforest harvest, rainwater harvesting could also be another technique, where you store whenever you have rain, and then when there's a drought, you can use those rains. Rivers could be other source of, water, particularly when we are talking about agriculture sector, water plays major role, right? So we have to work on solutions. So that's the point, right? I mean, it could be many simple, yet very innovative.
Great. No, thank you so much, Binayak. And I know I missed Vedant. Would you like to address this question of company structure and alignment with social goals?
Yeah. So, there are a lot of things like we count as a startup or also an SME. So in startup, things are very different. Like company structure, majorly, the main goal is to work with various policies, what government they are making out, that there is not a specific, like we are making cement-free bricks, but when we want to work with government, so they don't have any specific, tenders or specific policies that for any new product or any new startup which is doing an innovative product, which can be used by public spaces. So that is not still clear who will accept it, like what is the procedure for government to accept that new product. So there is a lot of things to be piloted before, to be validated before with the local communities, and then to work closely with government. So that's the biggest hurdles what we face, and this is every country have their own building codes, I can say. So Nepal has some different technical things, India has some different technical things. So to design the product in such a way that can be used universally, if I want to enter into African market, so it is easily acceptable in the local market. Yeah.
No, thank you very much, Vedant, for enlightening us on that. So we actually reached time. It's 9 o'clock, so it's time to head to the main section of the HLPF. Our speakers have provided us with so much thought-provoking discussion and practical examples and solutions from around the world of how SMEs can contribute to climate-smart recovery. So I'd like to thank all of them. Thank you to the distinguished speakers, our Deputy Executive Director, of course, Dorothy Tembo, Yvonne Otieno from Kenya, Gastón Vizcarra from Peru, Vedant Gandhi from India, Binayak Mala from Nepal, and Brian Lee Chandler from Barbados. And thank you to all the participants who've joined us from around the world. We wish you a successful HLPF, and we hope to see you again soon. And for more information, please visit the ITC website, introcen.org, and you can Google Green to Compete hubs, as Yvonne was saying, for more support for your initiatives. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for speaking to such a large crowd as well. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.